I sat in the corner booth of my favorite coffee shop watching the world move past the foggy window. It had been 3 months since I walked away from everything, and people looked at me like I was broken. My ex-wife Amanda thought I was lost. Her new boyfriend Troy made sure everyone knew I was jobless. What they did not know would destroy them. I owned TechVision Solutions, the tech company where Troy and his friends worked. They were about to learn that lesson the hard way, and honestly, I could not wait. Before I tell you how everything unfolded, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe, because what happens when arrogance meets karma is something you will not want to miss. Now let me take you back to where it all began. Amanda and I had been married for 5 years. 5 years that felt like a lifetime when I looked back on them. I built TechVision from absolutely nothing, working 16-hour days in a cramped apartment that doubled as our home and my office. The early days were brutal. I remember eating ramen noodles for dinner 4 nights a week because every dollar went back into the business. Amanda stood by me then. She brought me coffee at 2 in the morning when I was debugging code. She answered client calls when I was in meetings. She believed in the dream. But somewhere along the way, believing in the dream was not enough anymore. The late nights turned into missed anniversaries. The weekend work sessions meant skipped dinners with her family. I kept telling myself that once the company took off, everything would balance out. Once we had financial security, I could slow down. I was chasing success so hard that I did not notice I was losing her until it was too late. The conversation that ended our marriage lasted less than 10 minutes. Amanda sat across from me at our kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had gone cold. She said 6 words that I still heard in my sleep sometimes. I am tired of being married to a ghost. I tried to argue, tried to promise I would change, but we both knew the truth. I had already chosen between her and the company, and I had not chosen her. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday in March. 2 months later, I made a decision that confused everyone who knew me. I stepped back from the daily operations of TechVision. I hired a management team I trusted, delegated responsibilities, and told everyone I was taking time off. People assumed I was falling apart. My business partners worried I was having a breakdown. My mother called me every other day, concerned about my mental state. The truth was simpler than that. I was tired. Tired of running. Tired of proving myself. Tired of sacrificing everything for a company that could run without me hovering over every detail. So I took what looked like a break, but what I really did was step into the shadows of my own company. I remained the owner, the founder, the CEO on paper. I just was not sitting in the corner office anymore. I was watching, learning, and finally breathing. The first time I ran into Troy was at the grocery store on a Saturday afternoon. I was in the produce section debating between 2 types of apples when I heard Amanda's laugh. That bright, genuine laugh that I used to love. I turned and saw her walking toward me with a man I had never seen before. He was tall, probably 6 feet 2 inches, with styled hair and an expensive watch that caught the fluorescent lights. He wore confidence like a second skin. Amanda spotted me, and her smile faltered for just a second before she recovered. "Nick," she said, her voice careful. "This is Troy. Troy, this is Nick, my ex-husband." Troy extended his hand, and his grip was just a touch too firm. "Good to meet you, man," he said, but his eyes were measuring me up. "Amanda told me you are taking some time off work. Good for you, man. Everyone needs a break." The way he said break made it clear what he really meant. Unemployment. Failure. Giving up. I shook his hand and smiled because I had learned a long time ago that silence often said more than words. "Something like that," I replied. Amanda jumped in, and there was something in her voice I had never heard before. Pride mixed with pity. "Troy is doing amazing at his job. Sales manager, you know. Very stable." That word, stable. It landed like a punch to the gut. Stable was what I had never been able to give her. Stable was the opposite of the chaos our marriage had become. Stable was what Troy represented, and what I apparently did not. "That is great," I said, meaning it and not meaning it all at once. "Really happy for you both." We made small talk for another minute that felt like an hour. Troy mentioned something about a big sale he had just closed. Amanda talked about a restaurant they had tried. I nodded and smiled, and felt completely invisible. When they finally walked away, Troy's hand resting on the small of Amanda's back, in a gesture that was clearly meant for me to see. I stood there holding 2 apples I no longer wanted. The weeks that followed were harder than I expected. Word had spread somehow that I was not working. I ran into old friends at the gym, at the bank, at random places around town. The conversations always followed the same pattern. They would ask what I was doing these days. I would give a vague answer about taking time to figure things out. They would nod with sympathetic eyes that said they understood. But what they really understood was that they thought I had failed. Jake, a guy I had known since college, cornered me at the gym one Thursday morning. "Man, I heard about the divorce," he said while we were both on treadmills. "That is rough. So what are you doing with yourself?" "Staying busy," I replied, keeping my eyes on the display screen. "Yeah, but like work-wise, you looking for something, not actively, no." He nodded slowly, and I could feel his pity radiating across the 18 inches between our machines. After we finished, I heard him talking to another guy near the weight rack. The words carried further than he thought. He used to be so driven. Divorce really broke him. I left without showering, my jaw clenched so tight it ached. My mother called me that night. "Honey, I am worried about you," she said, her voice thick with concern. "You cannot just sit around doing nothing. You need structure. You need purpose. Have you thought about maybe getting a job somewhere? Even if it is not what you used to do?" I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. Instead, I said, "I am fine, Mom. I promise." "Are you, though?" Because Diane's son works in tech, and she said there are lots of openings. I could get you his number. I appreciate it, but I am okay. The silence on the other end told me she did not believe me. Nobody did. And I let them believe the worst, because explaining the truth felt like admitting I needed to defend myself. I had spent so many years proving I could build something from nothing. Now I was supposed to prove I had not lost everything. I was tired of performing for an audience. But the isolation was real. The judgment was real. And somewhere in those quiet weeks, I started to wonder if maybe everyone was right. Maybe I was just hiding from real life behind the excuse of taking time off. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I got invited to a birthday party. Marcus, a mutual friend of mine and Amanda's, was turning 35. He had stayed neutral during the split, maintaining friendships with both of us, which I respected. When the invitation came, I almost declined. The thought of running into Amanda again made my stomach turn. But then I realized that hiding from her meant she still had power over me, and I was done giving her that. I showed up at Marcus's house on a Saturday evening, wearing jeans and a casual button-down shirt. Nothing fancy. I was not trying to impress anyone. The house was packed with people, music playing from expensive speakers, the smell of grilled food drifting from the backyard. I grabbed a beer from the kitchen and tried to blend into the background. I made it about 45 minutes before Amanda arrived. She walked through the front door with Troy, and the energy in the room shifted. Or maybe that was just my perception. Troy had clearly put effort into his appearance. His suit probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. The watch on his wrist sparkled under the pendant lights. He carried himself like someone who had never questioned his place in the world. They made their rounds saying hello to people, and inevitably they reached me. Marcus was standing nearby when it happened, talking to someone about fantasy football. Troy spotted me first, and his face lit up in a way that made my skin crawl. "Hey, Nick," he called out loud enough that several people turned to look. "Still on that break, huh? Must be nice not having responsibilities." Conversations around us died down. People were listening now. I took a sip of my beer and kept my voice level. "I am managing." Garrett and Mason materialized beside Troy like loyal dogs. I had not noticed them before, but clearly they had come together. Garrett was shorter, stocky, with a beard that looked meticulously maintained. Mason was lanky with nervous energy that made him bounce slightly on his feet. Garrett jumped in with a smirk. "What do you even do all day, man? Play video games, watch daytime television," Mason added. "I could never just sit around like that. I would go crazy. I need to be productive, you know." Troy laughed, a booming sound that felt designed to humiliate. Busy doing what, sleeping and living the dream right. The circle of people around us had grown. I saw Marcus shift uncomfortably, clearly wanting to intervene but not sure how. I felt heat rising in my chest, but I pushed it down. "I stay busy enough," I said simply. "Busy doing what exactly?" Troy pressed, leaning in like we were old friends sharing a joke. "Seriously, I am curious. Because from where I am standing, it looks like you are just coasting." That is when Amanda spoke, and her words cut deeper than anything Troy had said. She stood beside him, her hand resting on his arm, and looked at me with something that might have been pity. "I think it is good. Nick is taking time to find himself," she said, her voice carrying that same careful tone from the grocery store. "Not everyone can handle real pressure." The implication was crystal clear. I could not handle pressure. I had crumbled under it. I was weak, and Troy was strong. The man who stood beside her now could handle what I could not. Troy pulled Amanda closer, his arm sliding around her waist in a gesture of possession. "Lucky I found a woman who appreciates a man with ambition," he said, looking directly at me. "Someone who shows up every day and gets it done." Garrett and Mason laughed right on cue. A few other people shifted awkwardly, not sure whether to laugh along or pretend they had not heard. I stood there, beer in hand, and felt something inside me crystallize. Not anger exactly. Something colder. More calculating. I could have left. Probably should have. Instead, I stayed. I finished my beer, got another, and spent the rest of the party observing. Watching Troy hold court, telling stories about his sales victories, his weekend plans, his gym routine. Watching Amanda laugh at his jokes and touch his arm. Watching Garrett and Mason orbit around him like he was the sun they revolved around. Around 10 o'clock, I stepped out onto the back porch to get some air. The music was muffled out here, the night air cool against my face. I was not alone for long. Through the sliding glass door, I could see into the kitchen. Troy stood with Garrett and Mason, and their voices carried through the screen. "Can you believe Amanda was married to that loser?" Troy said, shaking his head. "Guy does not even have a job. What kind of man lets himself go like that?" Garrett nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, seriously. What kind of man just gives up?" Mason chimed in. "I heard he used to run some startup or something. Probably failed and could not handle it. Some guys just are not built for the real world." They laughed together, the sound sharp and cruel. Troy raised his beer bottle. "Here's to being men who actually contribute something." I stood on that porch for a long moment, after they moved away. My hands were steady. My breathing was calm. But something had shifted. For 3 months, I had let people think whatever they wanted about me. I had told myself their opinions did not matter. But standing there listening to them mock not just my present but everything I had built, I realized I was done being invisible. I pulled out my phone and sent a text message to Lisa Chen, my director of human resources at TechVision. We needed to talk Monday morning. It was time to go back to work. Monday morning arrived with clear skies and a certainty I had not felt in months. I called Lisa at 8 a.m., before most of the office had settled in. She picked up on the second ring, surprised to hear from me so early. "Nick, is everything okay?" "Everything is fine," I said. "I need you to pull some employee files for me." Troy Jenkins, sales manager. Also Garrett Simmons and Mason Hall. I believe they are all in the same department. There was a pause. Lisa was smart enough not to ask why immediately. "Give me 20 minutes. 30 minutes later, I was sitting in a coffee shop 3 blocks from the TechVision offices, my laptop open, reviewing the files Lisa had sent over. Troy had been with the company for 2 years and 4 months. His performance reviews were solid, not exceptional. He consistently hit his numbers but rarely exceeded them. Garrett and Mason had similar records. Competent, but unremarkable. What interested me more were the notes in their files. Small things.